Are you disconnected, alienated, estranged, or possibly erased from your children's lives, possibly your grandchildren's lives, or other family members? Well, today we're going to be talking with a panel of parents, and they will be discussing what their journey has looked like through alienation, estrangement, and disconnection from their kids and family members. They are both part of a support group that directly supports parents, grandparents, and other alienated and estranged folks. They will let you know what their lives look like before they started attending meetings. They will share intimate details of how their life is progressing, what their relationships look like with their kids and other family members today, and what they're doing to recover their own lives. And what I mean by that is what they're doing to recover an emotional and spiritual relationship with themselves. This is a transformational episode, and I think you're going to get a tremendous amount of support, insight, and also learn some great places to go to actually start building resiliency and building different kinds of resources so you can have a full and robust toolkit. Well, let's get into it. So today we're going to be talking about community. We're going to be talking about a support group, and specifically we're going to be talking about PAA, which is Parental Alienation Anonymous, and it's a support group for parents and grandparents that are struggling with alienation, disconnection, estrangement, whatever word you would like to use, whatever resonates with you. And we have a panel of phenomenal parents coming on today that are going to share what their lives look like, what the group does for them, and what else has changed. So stay tuned. And at the end of our show, the alienated dad on the show is going to share one of his useful tips that he uses to get back into his body, to kind of like ground during the day. And it's a gratitude resource that I think you'll find really useful. So stay tuned. Hi, my name's Lawrence Joss, and welcome to Family Disappeared. And today we have a panel. We have an alienated mom and we have an alienated dad on the panel. And they're going to be called either mom or dad, or alienated mom and alienated dad. And this is just to protect their anonymity and to protect their privacy. So let's jump right in and hear what they have to say. So alienated mom, can you please go ahead and introduce yourself to everyone?
Hi, I am the mother of two teenage boys. I consider myself at this point alienated from them. I haven't had any contact with either of them for a number of years, and part of my journey really is to long term I want to reconnect with them, but I'm working on myself and trying to make life as comfortable and survivable for them as possible in terms of my interaction in their lives at this point.
Thank you so much, and thanks for introducing yourself. And alienated dad, can you go ahead and introduce yourself to everyone?
Sure. Thank you, Lawrence. It's great to be here. I am a dad. I'm 50 years old. I have a daughter who is now 14. I was alienated from her for the second half of 2021. I have since recovered all of my parenting time, which is 50% parenting time.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, and welcome both of you to the show. And we're really excited to have you here. And we're going to jump into some questions so you can share part of your life and part of your experience and what's changed and what's the same and anything else that comes up for you. So we're just going to start off basically before you found the support group. And we're talking about Parental Alienation Anonymous specifically as the support group that we all are part of the community of. And I'm just going to ask you a general question. What was your life like before you found a support group that had people that were struggling with similar things in common to you? And we're going to start off first with alienated dad. Where were you at before you found the support group?
I was in a place called hell. Yeah, I was in total, complete hell. I was in the throes of a legal situation in the court system. I was in the midst of a custody battle where there were amazing and horrendous accusations of abuse on my part. I had lost custody of my daughter. I also had lost my job and my home at the time. And I was emotionally and psychologically devastated.
Wow, that sounds like a really challenging situation that you were in. And how about you? How about you, alienated mom? Where were you when you arrived at the support group? What did your life look like?
When I first came to the group, I was seriously depressed. I hadn't spoken to my kids in years. I'd used up a lot of energy navigating the legal system and different arenas where I thought I would find support and wasn't satisfied with the support that I was getting. I did have a job at that point and I had somewhere to live, but I felt like all the life force had been sucked out of me. I felt like I was unlovable. I felt like I'd failed my family, certainly failed my sons. I felt like I was out of options. And the system, working within the system, had left me really jaded and beaten down. And I was at a point where I thought if I don't find some kind of group or support network, that I was going to sink into a hole that I would have a lot of trouble getting out of.
Wow. That really sounds like a struggle, and you're at your wit's end, and you really didn't know what to do before you found the group, right? And I'm going to ask both of you this question: like, what did you think you would find out of a community, out of a support group, out of other parents and grandparents and other family members that were struggling in a similar vein to you? Let's start with you. I'm actually going to call you mom and dad, if that's okay. So let's start with you, mom.
So when I came to the group, you know what, I really didn't know what to expect. The first meeting, I was just proud of the fact that once I'd found the group online, I actually joined and I actually turned my camera on and turned the sound because I was just I didn't want to see anyone. I didn't want anyone to see me. I was so done, but there was a glimmer of hope that I would be able to listen to other people that at least were going through the same thing as I was going through. And I wouldn't feel so isolated and I wouldn't feel so messed up and like there was something wrong that I'd done that I could have corrected. I just felt so lost. So that was really my hope in the first instance.
And just to clarify, you had said that you didn't have your camera on and you didn't have your sound on when you were at your first meeting initially. Is that what you said?
No, I did, but I was proud of the fact that I did do that because I didn't want to be seen. I didn't want to be identified. It was hard enough. So I was proud of the fact that I actually got to the group and was present as much as you can be in a Zoom arena.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So it was a lot of courage to turn your stuff on and you actually like showed up for yourself and for your life, and that felt really good.
That's right.
Oh, very cool. Very cool. And what about you, Dad?
I was fortunate enough to have crossed paths with a lawyer who couldn't represent me, but was able to give me an hour of her time. And she said, "It sounds like you are in the midst of a classic case of parental alienation." So I'm grateful to this person who gave my experience a name. I had never heard of parental alienation, but when it came time for me to reach out for help, I had what I would call an experience of divine intervention, where I realized that there was no way I was alone. And I started to search online, and I put in the search engine parental alienation support groups. So I'm grateful to that lawyer who named this for me. And I searched probably for 5 or 10 minutes, and I came across some other support groups, but I soon came across Parental Alienation Anonymous. Now, I have years and years and years of recovery and another 12-step fellowship, so I was inherently drawn to this. So I contacted the link, and someone was in touch with me right away, and 24 hours later, I was at my first Parental Alienation Anonymous meeting. So I have a lot of experience in meetings, so I expected, a recovery 12-step culture, but I have to be honest. I was totally expecting to be in a group of 95 to 100% men who had been alienated by women, and I thought I was going to be in a group of a bunch of angry dads. And I could not believe how indiscriminate parental alienation is. I mean, almost every meeting I go to, it seems like there are equal parts moms and dads. And I imagine out there, as we continue to grow, there will be, non-binary parents, and we'll find out that this sort of family disease, so to speak, of alienation is not specific to moms, dads, or genders.
Well, yeah, thank you. And I hear the surprise that it wasn't just dads, and that how this disease doesn't discriminate, and it involves everyone, and it can be anywhere at any particular time. It basically feels like, to me, like it has its own inertia and its own energy, and it moves around indiscriminately and just sucks, possibly anyone into its vortex. And you also mentioned, Dad, that you had 12-step experience before, so you came in with an understanding of the framework for the 12 steps. And what has been your experience in the 12 steps? And a lot of people might say, hey, that doesn't sound like a good place for me. It's all God orientated. It's a cult. Like, well, how would you sum up your 12-step experience over the years?
Well, I showed up in my native fellowship in a tremendous state of need. I was in the midst, in the grips of significant addiction. So I kind of showed up in a state of surrender where I needed help. I also had spirituality at the time, and I was not averse to, hearing the word God I came to believe quite naturally that a power greater than myself could restore me to some sanity, so to speak. So I can't say I was too nervous or afraid about 12-step culture.
Very cool. Very cool. Thank you for that. And it's nice to hear that you had an experience and you came into this fellowship and you continue to have pretty much a congruent experience as you did with your other fellowship. Is there any differences from this 12-step fellowship to the original one that you came in from that you'd like to share about?
I would say two things. In my native fellowship, the first step says we admitted that we were powerless over our addiction, that our lives had become unmanageable, right? And in PAA, the first step says, we admitted we were powerless over alienation or our alienator. So that is a difference. And so what recovery is it in PAA is a bit nebulous. It might mean different things to different people, whereas in, Narcotics Anonymous, you don't use drugs or alcohol. It's pretty clear cut. And what using is and what using isn't is not up for too much debate. But in PAA, there is this question that I continue to explore, and it is this question of like, what is our common purpose? What does it mean to be in recovery in PAA when so many of us have a wide range of contact with our children or a total lack of contact? So it's interesting. I'm still learning, so to speak.
Thank you for that. That's fantastic. And Alienated Mom, had you had any experience in any kind of 12-step groups or support groups before you came into PAA?
No, before I came to the group, I had an awareness of Al-Anon and 12-step, but no detail, no information, no connection with anyone that had worked any kind of recovery program like that. So I had no expectations around it. And if I think about it now, I had no idea that the focus of the program for me would be me working on myself. And I think if I'd known that at the beginning, I might have run scared, because as I look back on it now, I have my relationships are codependent. So take that away. And then I already felt like everything had been taken away from me. So if that had been put to me in a more maybe obvious fashion, I might have left the building. I think that would have scared me.
Right, that makes a lot of sense. You're coming to get some kind of relief, not necessarily to look at yourself. And the golden access point is doing the work on yourself, and that's where life kind of starts over. And on that same vein, did you have any conflict around God, or feeling like it was a culty kind of atmosphere? Or was there any kind of like stigma that came up for you, or anything that comes up for you in the rooms now that might make you feel uncomfortable?
No, you know what, there's not. I really like to feel that it's very much open to the individual as to whether or not they consider the group to be their higher power, the universe is their higher power, whether they come from a background of a particular faith or they're adopting a new kind of faith. It feels very relaxed and accommodating for whatever it is that you believe in, and there's room for discussion between different members that have different ideas. but are still on a recovery path. I really like that sense where it doesn't feel like there's any judgment or any idea that you need to be converted to a certain belief system in order to recover.
Right. What I'm hearing is everyone's welcome wherever they are, and no one necessarily has to believe in anything. And from my perspective, a 12-step group is a spiritual program. So that spirituality can manifest in any kind of way, whether it's a higher power, a God, energy, the earth, nature, the ocean. There's a lot of people that have all different kinds of access points. So I agree with that 100%. And here's a question for you. What does recovery mean to you and look like for you today? Because I know most people come into a program or a support group and the ultimate goal is, hey, I want my kid back, I want my grandkid back, I want this relationship back, and then everything's going to be okay. But let's start off with Alienated Mom. What does recovery look like or mean for you today?
Wow, that's a good question. That's a big question. For me, it really means, and it ties in with the piece about me running scared at the beginning, I really needed the program and I wanted it, but I was frightened to begin with. But now the focus is entirely on me, and I've realized that unless I have a good relationship with myself, a good connection with myself, unless I learn to love myself, I can't connect to anyone, whether it be my kids, my grandparents, the people that I work with, the neighbor across the road. And I was never able to identify that until this point, because I lived vicariously through other people. I was so codependent in my relationships that I never had my face up to the mirror to that extent. And so that's what recovery means to me. It's how I interact with people. It's how I respond to situations, how I try not to react in certain situations. And then really discovering where I end and where the other person begins.
Yeah, so you're just establishing your own boundaries and figuring out, like you're saying, where you start, the other person ends, and not jumping into someone else's space. And can you share maybe a recovery moment that's not related directly to the kids? Any other instance, work, other family members? Is any one quick little tidbit you can share of what recovery looks like and how it's manifested in your life?
Well, I can certainly feel it in my friendships. I know, especially as I've been walking the recovery path, and I really see the benefit of it, and I feel like it's making me come to life. I have certain people in my life that I don't know that I want to necessarily encourage them to join a recovery program, but I can feel myself a little bit getting up on a soapbox and trying to interfere where I haven't been asked to help out. And so I've learned, again, it's the piece where I end and where they begin. I've learned to be able to observe it without thinking that I need to necessarily rescue them, or that it's my job to do that. For me, that's part of an old identity that I had, and I'm trying, but I can really see the different, I can stop myself in the process of overdoing it, of getting out of my lane. And I never used to be able to do that before.
Oh, that sounds wonderful. And what about like with your parents? Have you seen like a shift over there in communications or how you show up in your actual family your family system?
There's been a big shift, and I've gone through all sorts of phases of feeling sorry for them, feeling angry with them. But certainly now, if I think about it, I have a lot of compassion for them because they've been in survival mode all of their lives and likely will never step out of that. And I feel like I've had an opportunity to do that. So I understand why they hold it so closely. They hold it so tightly. And I'm the member of the family that's put my hand up and said, I want to do it differently. And that threatens them, and they don't know how to deal with it. And they need me to play the game in order to feel comfortable themselves. But I can separate that from them not loving me. They just don't know how to be another way. And I wouldn't have been able to say that before I joined the program. I had a lot of anger and a lot of feeling unloved and no guidance throughout my life, and feeling like that was their job. And I felt like I'd been left out.
Wonderful, wonderful. And Alienated Dad, what does recovery mean to you today?
So the question is, what does recovery mean to me today? And that is a phenomenal question. And I'd like to first answer that by saying, what did recovery mean to me when I first came to Parental Alienation Anonymous? And that will give more insight to what recovery means today. But in the beginning, I needed to be around people who could identify with the madness and the chaos and just the inconceivable dynamics of parental alienation. If you haven't been through it or experienced it, if you don't know what it was, no one's really going to understand. And when I first started to talk about what was happening to me outside my circle of PAA, I would always ask people, have you ever heard of parental alienation? And I would even play a game. What do you think it means? And no one knows about it. This term, this concept is new. So initially, recovery meant being around people who could identify with just the insane aspects of my what people call their alienation story, right? And recovery initially meant to me not losing my wits, right? I feel like if you're in the throes of parental alienation, and not all cases are like mine, but many are, but in particular, if you're being like accused of something or blamed of something in a certain way, and if you're caught up in systems, it's almost designed for you to lose your cool and act out in a way that might totally and completely confirm the lies that are sort of being told about you. So that's what it was at first, right? But today, and we're talking, 1.6 years later, we're talking after, dozens and dozens and probably a couple of hundred of PAA meetings. And we're also talking, it's been a year since I've recovered my parenting time, right? So what does recovery mean to me today? I have to say, a lot of similar things for me. It is absolutely positively recovering a sane and loving relationship with myself, right? Recovering a sane and loving relationship with my higher power. These are both things that I completely lost when alienation took form in my life. And also gathering together, the story, if you heard my first 10 shares in PAA meetings, it would be like, let me tell you what my daughter's mom did this week. Let me tell you what it says in this court motion. Let me tell you how crazy she is in this whole situation. Oh my God, isn't this crazy? And now today, it's much different. It really is about recognizing what I don't have control over. Like other people's perceptions, what other people choose to do or say or write in a court motion. Like I currently am not caught in a system, right? My legal situation has resolved. I've had 6 months in a row where I get an email from my lawyer and there's a bill, and I know what the bill is going to be. It's going to be $0. But do I check it anyway and look? Yes, I do. Because I'm like, oh my God, look at that. Another, because, there were months where it was just like thousands and thousands of dollars, So recovery to me today means how can I be healthy, right? How can I be healthy in my life? And alienation changed my family structure. So that includes my biological family, like my side of my family was also involved in the dynamics of my alienation story. So now that I've sort of lost my family essentially, and I have recovered my relationship with my daughter, the question I have to ask myself is, how do I create meaningful, loving, deep relationships with the people who aren't necessarily members of my biological family, whom I don't have relationships with anymore? So this is such a great question, and it can go on and on and on, and there's much more to say about what recovery means to me today, but that's my answer.
Fantastic. And I'm just going to ask you one follow-up question on that, because I think a lot of people will be really interested in it. And just a couple minute, whatever, like, what does recovery look like in relationship to your daughter? What differences and maybe challenges are you facing as you reintegrate fully into her life and you start to put this a little bit further in your rearview mirror?
Sure. Well, I should say, in order to create a collective understanding, alienation doesn't seem to exist too deeply in my daughter. Many parents come to meetings and alienation has taken such form and such structure that the child rejects the alienated parent. So that never totally happened. But recovery in relationship with my daughter, I can tell you what it doesn't mean. It doesn't mean this. Let me tell you how crazy your mother is. Oh my God, look at, what she said in these court motions, and I know your mother manipulated you into saying things, and I want you to tell me the truth. That's what it doesn't look like. That would make things so much worse. So recovery to me today means accepting what happened, right? The events of 2021 happened, accepting that I chose someone, right? I chose someone, maybe not entirely consciously, with whom I would play out to a certain extent the dynamics that were formed in my family of origin, as well as my daughter's mother's family of origin. So recovery to me means, how can I be healthy and contained in relation to my daughter? How can I accept what happened and where she's at? And how can I proceed skillfully from here? Because the disease is powerful and it can manifest itself in a number of ways. So I feel like I need to be as healthy as I possibly can so I can proceed in the midst of, just because I have my daughter back doesn't mean I don't live in a family system that still has alienation as an issue. So I'm going to stop talking there.
Okay, yeah, wonderful, 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 interesting stuff. And I just want to let anyone know out there that's listening, we're using the word specifically alienation here. And as I said in the beginning of the show, this can be you feel just disconnected from your kids, you feel estranged, you don't really know what's happening. It doesn't really matter what the word is. We're just sharing our experience within community and what happens within community and recovery. And I'm just going to share a little aside for you. When I first got to 12-step meetings, I didn't go to 12 steps meetings to make friends. I didn't go there to do anything else but not to die. Like, I'd been to every specialist, I'd knocked on every attorney's door, I'd done everything possible, and I was at the point that there was nowhere else to go. And the 12-step meeting was the last house on the street. That one with the blinds down that looked kind of scary. Like, how do you go into that house? That's what it felt like for me when I got there. And I didn't want to make any friends. I wanted to just show up. I wanted someone to give me some kind of solution. I wanted to fix my family, and I wanted to get my kids back, and I just wanted to move on and ignore everything. And the thing that we're talking about here is the ultimate thing about a 12-step group is you actually get to find yourself again. You get to cultivate a loving, healing, emotional, and spiritual journey with yourself. And from that place, as the parents here are sharing, they go out into their life and they start to cultivate different kinds of relationships and deeper, more meaningful relationships. And yes, the ultimate goal is to have a real, meaningful, robust relationship with our kids. And every other relationship in our life is really important, because once we start to integrate all that stuff, then we're in such a much better place to go and connect with our kids and reach out and start to change the family dynamic. So I just wanted to share that piece. Wow, we're running out of time for today, so we're going to end there and we're going to pick this up in the next episode. But such great stuff today. There's so much that has resonated with me and so much of the experience that I've lived too. And just having community and a safe place to go and a safe place to express myself has changed my life. It has given me the ability to go out into the world and feel resourced, knowing that I have people that can understand what I'm experiencing and what I'm saying, and that I don't have to continuously explain what's going on. So make sure to come back for next week's episode, and we'll do part 2 of the show, and there'll be some more great revelations and some tools that you can use, and it's going to be really, really, really exciting. So what are your next steps? In the show notes, there's going to be a link to the support groups if you're interested or curious in finding out what they're about or reading more about them or attending some meetings. Again, there's 14 meetings a week. You can literally go to a meeting today after listening to this podcast if you're looking for some support. And maybe it's just nice to know that it's out there, and when you're ready to use the resource, you can tap into it. I'll also put down the website for the support group, and you can read more about the meetings. You can read about sponsorship. You can read about so many different things that are happening in the community and learn about upcoming events as well. There's also going to be a fundraising link in the show notes, and this is all free. All these services are free. I just wanted to reiterate that again. And the way we can provide this is by getting support from listeners like you and other folks that really want to help parents that are struggling in this situation. So we appreciate anything you're willing to contribute. And lastly, in the show notes, there is a link to the Family Hope Project. And the Family Hope Project is an advocacy project where we're collecting art sentences just describing what's going on with the art. And we create this virtual art gallery, so anyone that wants to learn about parental alienation, estrangement, erasure, disconnection can go to the art gallery. They can see submissions from parents and grandparents and family members, read a little bit about what they're going through, the struggles, the victories, and it becomes a place that we can educate people, we can affect legislation, we can affect change in the court systems and any kind of family systems out there. So please check that out and contribute to that. The more art we get, the sooner we get it, the bigger impact that we can have, and we'd love you to contribute to that.